Welcome to this week's episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report's This Week in Diaspora History. Let's get started. Second of Nissan, 1283, Mayence, Germany. The Jews of Mayence, Germany were massacred on Easter. Mayence is one of the oldest Jewish communities in Germany. It is presumed that the Jews came to the city as merchants in the Roman era, and may have even founded a settlement there. In 1259, Mayence Jews were ordered to wear the Jewish badge identifying them as Jews to all who saw them. A number of years later, in 1283, numerous Jews fell victim to the blood libel. The synagogue was also burnt and destroyed. When Christians in Mayence attacked the local Jews on Easter Monday, in 1283, the seventh day of the Jewish Passover, it was a prelude to a series of widespread persecutions. Easter, the feast on which not only Christ's resurrection but also his passion is remembered, was a favorite date for acts of violence against the Jews, particularly when it coincided with Jewish Passover. What triggered the Mayence pogrom was the discovery of a dead body of a young boy. It was said that his wet nurse had sold him to the Jews for performing their ritual murder. This anti-Semitic stereotype suggests that Jews were required to murder and use the blood of Christians in order to make their matzah for Passover. The attempts of the Mayence City Council to prevent an inquest on the death, as announced by the Archbishop, led to the violent attack on local Jews. At least 10 Jews were murdered. As a result of these repeated persecutions, some Jews of Mayence, along with those of other German cities, wished in 1285 to immigrate to Eretz Israel. Others escaped the boundaries of the empire to freedom. In the 19th century, the Jewish population of Mayence was up to 2,700 people. Following the Holocaust, the Jewish numbers decreased to 80 people. Today, the Jewish community of Mayence counts around 1,000 members, and it is growing rapidly due to immigration from other Eastern European countries. 4th of Nissan, 1948, Jerusalem, Israel. A convoy of physicians, scientists, and guards totaling 75 people were ambushed on the way to Mount Scopus. In 1925, the Jewish community of the British Mandate for Palestine established the first Hebrew university on Mount Scopus in Jerusalem. Soon after, the Hadassah Hospital was opened nearby. The location high above the city had a spectacular view of the old city and was surrounded by hostile Arab neighbors. Following the UN partition decision in November 1947, Arab irregular forces began attacking Jews in British Mandate for Palestine, and violence escalated. In 1948, Arab troops blocked access to the Hadassah Hospital and the Hebrew University campus on Mount Scopus. The only access was via a narrow road, a mile and a half long, passing through the Arab neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. Arab sniper fire on vehicles moving along this access route became a regular occurrence. In addition, road mines had been laid. British Colonial Secretary and High Commissioner had given assurances that Jewish relief convoys would be given British protection. When food and supplies at the hospital began to dwindle, a large convoy carrying doctors and supplies set out for the besieged hospital, marking it with a red shield, which should have guaranteed its neutrality. At 9:30 a.m., a convoy consisting of 2 ambulances, 3 buses and medical staff, 3 logistical trucks, and 2 Haganah armored vehicles headed up the narrow road to Hadassah Hospital, carrying medical and military supplies. Approximately 15 minutes later, a mine was electronically detonated and Arab forces opened fire on the entire convoy. 5 vehicles, along with the rear Haganah escort car, managed to back out and return to Jerusalem. 2 buses were later hit by Molotov cocktails and burst into flames. Some of the unhurt passengers tried to make a mad dash to safety, but the Arabs picked them off one by one as they jumped out. Only 1 man from each bus survived. In the attack, 78 Jews, including 23 women, and 1 British soldier were killed by gunfire, or were burnt when their vehicles were set on fire. The 31 victims that could be identified were buried individually. A few weeks after the massacre, the decision was made to evacuate 700 Jewish doctors, students, and patients from the hospital. In 1948, a deal was finally worked out where Mount Scopus became a United Nations area with 84 Jewish policemen assigned to guard the now shuttered hospital. In the armistice agreement with Jordan, signed in 1949, the hospital became a demilitarized Israeli enclave. Today, both the university and the hospital are both fully functioning in Israeli hands. 8th of Nissan, 1772, Vilnius, Lithuania. The first rabbinic opposition to the Hasidic movement was announced in Vilna. A writ of excommunication was endorsed by the Vilna Gaon. Dov ben Avraham of Mizrich, also known as the Maggid of Mizrich, was a disciple of Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer, also known as the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidic Judaism. The Maggid of Mizrich was chosen as his successor to lead the early Hasidic movement. Hasidim spread rapidly as a result of Dov Ber's power and personality gaining a foothold within Lithuania and Ukraine. The local rabbis were annoyed by the growth of the movement, but could not easily do anything about it. The Gaon of Vilna, Elijah ben Solomon Zalman, was the only rabbi whose reputation extended beyond the borders of Lithuania. When Hasidim spread to Vilna, the Vilna Gaon enacted the first major excommunication against the Hasidic movement. This was issued April 11th, 1772. The Vilna Gaon believed this movement to be antagonistic to Talmudic rabbinism and was suspicious that it was only a remnant of the recent Sabbatean fraudulent messianic movement. In 1781, when the Hasidim renewed their proselytizing work under the leadership of their Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Leadi, the Baal HaTanya, the Gaon excommunicated them again, declaring them to be heretics with whom no pious Jew might intermarry. However, the excommunications did not stop the tide of Hasidism. The Hasidic movement has not only not gone away, but it has grown tremendously. Today, the Hasidic movement makes up around 3% of the entire world Jewish population. This has been another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Reports, this week in Diaspora History. Don't forget to check us out on social media at jdr.podcast, and don't forget to look up our other episodes on your favorite podcast source. We'll see you next time.